I believe we take tests in order to see how good we are in this certain course, how much we learned in this certain course.
To get an assessment of what we've learned from the class.
I like feedback. I like to know what I'm doing wrong and how to fix it. But I feel like it's more effective on homeworks, or, I mean, it can be effective on quizzes as well, but it depends on if the teacher is willing to take the time to go over it after they like hand it back. Like, you know, any questions, or like, I saw that like, you know, a lot of people got tripped up on this question, like, let's go over it so we can fix it for next time.
If we get points off in a certain test, we have the right to know why, and how we can change, how we can grow from that.
It's also imperative that the homework gets graded and returned in a timely manner. Because if you do like 3 homework assignments before a test, but you never receive it back and know what you're doing wrong, you have nothing to gauge what to improve on or what to work on. Even it could be something simple, or it could be something that's completely holding you back. Whether it's, you know, like just keeping the correct units, like throughout a.
Or rounding. It's more stress on your grade if you have less throughout, and not even less throughout, but if quizzes and assessments are, you know, the only part of your grade, if you do bad on them, there's no like coming back from that. Like if you do bad on 2 out of the 3, like what are your chances of passing? Whereas if you have homework or something, or weekly quizzes along with it, then like that helps.
When it comes to this level, it's the matter if you do good or bad or not, especially in my case, it's the matter of still having those supports or not, having the grant or not. It's a matter of if I want to stay on this course, stay in this college, or drop out.
I think they are a validation of hard work and understanding if you do well.
For me specifically, when referring to midterm exams, they serve as sort of like a benchmark for me to sort of judge my performance that far into the course, and how I can take further action to improve my grade for the overall course. The results, if they're bad, it does hurt, but it induces some sort of anxiety in me, like some sort of pressure saying I have to find out what change I need to make. I need to find out what mistakes I've made with the material and solve it quickly enough to bring my average for the class up before the conclusion of the course.
I believe that you make really good points there, especially with lower grades often inducing like more negative feelings like anxiety.
Yeah.
But one that I've definitely noticed, especially in classes that have a significant centralization of one midterm and one test at the end, one final exam, is that for the midterm, for example, if you are getting a low score, oftentimes that can actually demotivate you to progress in the class, because on one hand, if the midterm is not the entire grade, you may go, these are the mistakes I made, I know what I have to do to get my grade back up. But if the class grade is heavily focused on the midterm and the final exam, you bomb the midterm and you go, well, my grade is either going to be bad or awful. And that significantly takes a toll on your motivation that you have progressing in the class further.
Yeah, it's sort of apathy inducing sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I say weekly for me, only because I'm not a great test taker, so I need to have my information refreshed every week.
But sometimes having an exam grade, like in one class with 33% of my grade, is just well, if I fail that exam, there's already possibly down a few letter grades. There needs to be some kind of hybrid examination in the middle that doesn't weigh so much, but doesn't weigh so little, and something like that I think needs to be explored.
I would say maybe like weekly homework, not like a ton, and then maybe quizzes like at the end of like a chapter or a unit, instead of having like a quiz 4 weeks out and it's 4 chapters you're going over.
So we got like midterm obviously midterm is in the middle, obviously, and then final exam at the beginning of the year. But I believe there should be a little bit of a quiz somewhere in between the beginning of the year to midterm, somewhere, or if not, at least 2 in there, and split up the lectures in thirds or half by half, and do the same for the same second semester. If we have the beginning of the year to midterm, I say we have like at least 1, 2, 3 quizzes just to make sure. Well, as long as if you bomb the midterm, there's still a chance of you having a decent grade.
Just needs to depend on like what the material is and how much is really covered, so weekly or bi-weekly, depending on what's covered.
So in my opinion, I think it should be maybe a small quiz of like 5 questions, or even 5 to 10 questions at the end of every week or every other week, just so you can also gauge your knowledge, if you've actually absorbed what the professor was talking about that week. And if not, maybe you need to go back and study some more so you can do better on the next quiz or the next test. And then you can even have a smaller test that's not an exam, but it's not a quiz. So it's like at the end of every topic, or maybe one at the end of in between the midterm and the beginning of the class. So you can really just see where you are.
So I don't believe that there should be like a specific number because of like a quizzes or tests administered, because of course every single class has their own material, their own curriculum. But what I think is the most important element would be to decouple all the material from the bulk test or the midterm that everyone will be focused on, and instead maybe administer a small quiz or test after each portion of material, like a chapter by chapter, for example. Because if you simply put all of your grade stock into the midterm or the final, you're not going to be able to have your students really absorb the material to the fullest if instead of, let's say, the alternative, chapter 1 you read over and then you do the quiz, you absorb that material more fully. But if you're going to put it all in the midterm, the students will have to read the first 4 chapters over. They cram that all into a few studying sessions, but that bulk knowledge that they're all cramming into that study session, they're not able to absorb that as easily as if we split it up piece by piece.
The whole point of homework or like quizzes is to like test your knowledge throughout the way and ask questions if like you have them, and to like get feedback on what, you know, like what units to use it, or like what.
If you're making mistakes, it allows you to know what to correct as well,
It allows you to fix it
without
before
destroying
like
your grade.
the test.
And it's like every quiz that you go over, it kind of refreshes you all the information that you're getting.
I believe like the ultimate question in all of this is the curriculum of the course designed for students to learn or for students to receive high grades? And really the former is what we should be navigating towards, and a great way to do that would be more frequent tests and quizzes. Because of that, of course, on face value, that does sound scary. A lot of tests, a lot of quizzes. But when you break down the material into separate sections, decentralize it from this large bulk final exam or midterm, then it really gives students more wiggle room to learn, process, and understand the material. And if they stumble and fall along the way, if you solely rely on that midterm, that final exam, they won't be able to get back up from that. And really, that undermines the entire intention of a student learning. It really just encourages the students to focus it all on that bulk study session before the midterm, before the final exam, where they'll attempt to retain all this knowledge for a day, and after that, this goes out the window. But when we break it down part by part, it does not overwhelm the student as much. We are more able to understand, process the material in a way that does not personally overwhelm us like it does overwhelm a lot of the student base.
Can you kind of find too that it's like whatever you learned on the previous quiz, like will be on the next one, and then like
And then sometimes,
it leads up.
Sorry.
It leads up to like the final or the midterm.
true. And then it's like sometimes whatever quizzes or tests we take, they might be on our midterm or a final, so it kind of helps you remember that information.
That concept of breaking the material down into these smaller sections, it actually had just a simple weekly or bi-weekly quiz, depending on how quickly we got the chapters done. We learn the material, we go over it as a class. Classmates bring up the material that they have trouble understanding, and we go over that. And then we have the quiz to assess our knowledge at the end.
Homework, quizzes, you have your final, you have your midterm, lab if you're doing assignments or anything.
If you had or got a question wrong, but you understood why you got it wrong.
It would assess you in many different aspects, both retention of knowledge, but also your ability to be able to recall it if needed and utilize it.
Let me just point this out here. As someone with autism, yes, I have autism. A very mild case means I think differently, I study differently, I do everything differently. And with a professor that's flexible to try and help everyone, and I mean everyone, to do their utmost best in a course, in a class, in life, well, I'm not very good at speaking. That's one thing I can't do. But as a teacher or a professor that can sit down with a student one-on-one, help a student who likes to do stuff hands-on like me, myself. Someone who can sit one-on-one to make sure that they can pass, make sure they're successful. They're the best kinds of professors.
Just accommodate to every student and teach your students to use intuition rather than memory to pass their classes.